Hello and welcome to Transforming Workplaces from Policy to Practice with the Bernardi Centre, where you get to hear from our lawyers, trainers, and investigators about our training programs and the work that we do in creating respectful, positive, and psychologically safe workspaces. I'm your host, Diondra Filicetti, and also the Instructional Designer here, and today I am joined by Brian Gottheil, the Director of Training and Transformation. Brian, do you mind introducing yourself?
I'm as you just said, the Director of Training and Transformation, and so in this role I oversee training. That's probably pretty obvious. Transformation, we've rebranded what HR people usually call workplace restoration as workplace transformation because we don't necessarily want to restore some previous situation in a workplace, but we want to transform it into something new. And so that includes our services with workplace culture assessments, conflict mediations, one-on-one sensitivity training, and other things that just try to build the best workplace as possible.
Wow, it's such fulfilling work, it sounds like.
It really is.
So I wonder, just before we get into the work that we do, what led you to this position?
So my background is as an employment lawyer, as with many of the people here, and it was really a gradual shift over time as I started doing more and more workplace investigations, really getting to meet lots of employees and lots of different people within workplaces and see what relationships were like and where conflicts came from, as well as getting to do more and more of the training. And I really fell in love with doing the training because it felt like you could make a bigger difference. So as an employment lawyer, you might really help one person by settling a lawsuit for them, or one employer by helping them navigate some difficult situation. But if you speak to a room of 20 or 30 people, and more proactively, it just feels like you could make more of a difference. And so I was really thrilled to have the opportunity to move more away from the investigations, although I do still do those, and more into this area.
I love that. It's as if the impact is exponential.
Yes.
Right? Because
absolutely.
of the ripple effect of the change and the knowledge that you're imparting on all the participants that are joining your training. I've had the honor of being in a training session with Brian, and it was really great. Like it's very much focused on, building those practical skills and giving you the opportunity to practice, which builds your confidence.
Yes, and it has to be practical. There's a ton of education research, which you're more familiar with than I am, I'm sure, that people don't learn things by being talked at. People don't learn things by being told. People learn by doing, and part of the doing is the analyzing. It's working with ideas, working with concepts, and working with how do we apply these concepts in practice. And so everything needs to be practical if it's going to have an impact.
Absolutely. And there's a retention pyramid, and it talks about how different modes of education have the effect on learner retention. And you're absolutely right. Talking at people doesn't work.
In fact, I not even remember what you just said.
Exactly. Okay, so let's talk about your experience with the learners in the room. So in terms of the organizations that you've worked with when it comes to training, who's in the room? What types of organizations? What sectors? Unions, non-union?
Really all sorts. So a lot, the majority is broader public sector. We work with a lot of municipalities. We work with police and fire services. We work with universities, colleges, healthcare organizations, both hospitals and long-term care, and public health organizations. And so a lot of it is broader public sector like that, but certainly have done work with private sector clients as well, indigenous communities. And so it's a big mix. Of course, this is a heavily unionized sector, so often they're unionized, but in addition to the frontline employees in a lot of the respect training sessions, also do a lot of training for frontline managers and supervisors, as well as for HR professionals on a bunch of different topics.
As you're in the training rooms with these different sectors and organizations, do you notice a difference?
There's definitely a difference between different work groups or work cultures, and it's not even necessarily as much between the organizations, but within, say, a municipality, you've got people who are very much blue-collar construction, people who are working in roads, in public works, in parks, who are, their job is being outdoors and doing physical and very highly skilled physical and technical work, but that's going to be a very different culture than people within the same municipality who have a more of an office type of job, which will be very different from people who are, say, in the library or at the community centers running programs for children, who in turn will be different from the culture of a police or a fire service. And so you really need to get to know a lot of these different cultures, which is one of the things that's really interesting about the work, is getting to know these different workplace cultures.
And one of the things that makes instructional design effective is knowing your audience before you go in to do the training. So being able to come with relevant examples or topics of discussion that will engage the room is really important. So the experience you have in working with all these different organizations is likely helpful in being able to know what questions to ask or what activities to do or what examples to bring.
Right. I love when I'm asked in the middle of a training session, as I was recently for something I did in PEI. Did you like have a hidden camera inside our workplace to come up with this scenario? And it really, it's nice to know that I sort of hit it on the head with that. And of course, we get our client feedback in the design process too, so that we get some input to say that, yes, this is going to resonate with our people. This is the kind of situation they might see in their work.
And just following up on feedback, because it is really interesting to see the outcome of the work that we do. So has there been positive feedback that you've received from your sessions?
I was just mentioning this workplace restoration 3-day training session that my colleague Lori Reed and I did for Health PEI. They gave us permission to name them. And at the end of the session, came up to us and said, you might never know what the impact is that you have, but we will take all these skills away from this session and we will use it when we're doing workplace restorations, and you'll have this follow-on impact that you never know you had. It was one of the really most meaningful compliments I've gotten after a training session.
That is very thoughtful.
Yeah.
And it comes full circle with all the work that you do. There's a lot of preparation that goes into training.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
And so to then see that...
It's nice to have an instructional designer to do something.
That's for sure. It's fun. It is fun. Yes, it is. It is a lot of work. And to then see that all this work that you're doing is transforming workplaces. One
of my colleagues, Rob Richler, has told a story recently where somebody, he ran into somebody, I think just and he might be able to tell the story better, but he ran into somebody from a training session afterwards who told him that this person was willing to bring a concern forward to management about a respect issue in their workplace that before the training they wouldn't have brought forward, and that allowed management to do something about it. And I actually had a similar experience with a training that I did in December 2024, and I found out afterwards that one of the people who was in that session where we were really emphasizing the importance of bystander interventions and the importance of not letting disrespectful behavior slide but bringing it forward, and somebody in that session had afterward brought something forward to HR and said, after the training session, I just felt like it wouldn't be right, and I couldn't sort of look at myself in the mirror if I just sat on this.
You have to think of the confidence that it takes to be able to do that, and the fact that participants walk away from our training feeling more confident and empowered, I think is the better word. Empowered to raise those complaints, whether it's for themselves or for a colleague, is really important in the work that we're doing.
Yeah, and I wonder sometimes if employers looking at this are thinking, well, do I want to get these more complaints? I actually think in this very last example that I told, that HR might have been happier had this individual gone and talked to the individual directly or talked to their direct manager instead of making a complaint from HR to HR. But of course, the fact that they saw this as something needing to be dealt with and that they were going to do something about it and take a step, I think is just a positive. And one of the things we have seen in our experience is that when employers make it safer for employees to come forward, there is initially this rise in complaints, which is actually sort of a good thing because it's in the open and you can deal with it. And then it starts to come down again as we're making the positive change.
That was one of the most surprising yet very quickly seemingly logical things that I've learned as I started working here. I thought, well, why would our training cause an increase in complaints? But very quickly I realized, oh, well, that's what we wanted. We wanted to empower people to put these things forward. So it's not that the issue, there are more issues, it's that we're now empowering the participants to have them resolved.
Right, but we don't only want to empower them to make complaints, of course. We really want to empower them to resolve their own conflicts with their coworkers and to solve their own problems in a way.
Absolutely. Now, I wonder, because in every classroom, there's always students who tend to be more difficult than others. So in training sessions, have you had more difficult experiences? You know, maybe it's a disengaged participant or someone who perhaps disagrees with the content. And how do you approach that?
So the person who disagrees with the content, I actually like that. I know people say, well, that's the difficult person, the person who's pushing back or challenging. I actually like that person because in my mind, if you have one person who's bold enough to actually say the disagreement out loud, you got 5 other people at least who are thinking it and then are just going to tune out from the session because they think it doesn't speak to them. And so getting that out on the table and able to address it, I actually think is very important, and I love when that happens. And you know, as long as they're relatively respectful about it, if they're really impolite about it, then I will still engage them because I think it's important to meet people where they are and engage them. But after a couple back and forth, I'll say, happy to talk about this more at the break. We just need to move on to some other pieces now. But in general, what I'll try to do in that situation is, first of all, acknowledge what they said, and yeah, I hear you. And these things are tough. These things are challenging, and I see where you're coming from. Because again, I think it's important to meet people where they are and acknowledge them. And I'll try to ask a question to have them think about it in a bit of a different way. What about this? Or what if you looked at it from this perspective? I'm not even necessarily expecting that to convince that person. In fact, it probably won't. But for the other people in the room who are listening to it, including some of those people who might have had some of the same concerns in the back of their mind but weren't going to speak up and say it, I don't think we can fundamentally change behavior in a 3-hour session alone, but what I do think we can do in a 3-hour session is plant those seeds that get people starting to think about things in a different way, and I think it gives us an opportunity to do that.
It's your perspective towards the situation. Because in my past experience, I have seen facilitators who really don't appreciate those sorts of challenges, and it shifts the direction of the training depending on how you respond.
I think people, when they feel like you're honest with them, like even if it's not the answer they want to hear, even if they disagree with you, if they feel that you're honest and you're not sugarcoating, you're not hiding it, I think they respect that more and they're more willing to listen to what you have to say about it.
And it's not about trying to be right. Sometimes as a facilitator, you feel a sense of authority and you feel like you have to have the right answer. But oftentimes when you're focusing on trying to be right, nobody really wins. It's really about having that discussion and moving the needle on people's learning as opposed to trying to overcome objections.
I agree 100%. And one of the biggest pieces of advice I give to newer trainers coming up through our firm is to remember that you're actually not there to be the expert, and you don't have to be the expert or be right. You're there to facilitate. You're there to draw out the knowledge that's already in the room. So yeah, if you don't know the answer to something, that's fine. Put it back to the group. What does everybody think about this? And I don't think it shows sort of weakness or lack of knowledge. It shows an amount of confidence to be able to say, good question. I'm not sure. Let me think about that and get back to you.
Exactly. Now, on that note, those are ways that we engage the audience, right? Throwing the question back to them and having that discussion in the room to, like you said, draw out the knowledge. So what are some other ways in which you engage your learners?
Activities being the biggest one, and we try to vary up the types of activities that we do so it's not boring. So we'll do role plays for example, management training on how to have a performance management conversation with an employee. Well, the best way to practice that is to actually practice it. So have somebody be the employee. I actually have a lot of fun with that one because I ask everybody first, what are some of the challenging things that employees have done in these kinds of cases, and just get them to brainstorm a list. Mm-hmm. And then I say, so when you're role-playing the employee, do one of the things on this list so you can challenge your manager. People appreciate that. We sometimes do case studies with small group discussion and then taking it up in the big group. We'll do other kinds of quiz type of activities, activities that just get people to focus on, for example, why certain behavior that they may be inclined to laugh off or to think is not a big deal might actually be more serious than they think. And so we have some activities around that.
Wow.
Polls. I don't actually do polls as much, but I probably should do more of them.
I wonder, do you have a favorite activity?
So I love role play. Maybe that's why I spent the most time talking about it just now. I really like the role play with manager and employee. I also really like the role play that we do in our workplace investigations course with an investigator and a party who's being interviewed. Because it's fun. It gives people the chance to act, and in some cases people actually, and I'm talking about HR or management people, actually find it cathartic to be able to be that difficult employee. But it also is really educational. It really helps people practice these skills in a practical and not just a theoretical way.
You take on a whole new opportunity when you're actually put into the position, as opposed to learning, if I was in this position, this is what I should do. And I was going to ask you another question about the overall impact and why you think it's important for organizations to invest in training and transformation.
Well, it's huge. People spend 8 hours a day, depending on their job, 10 or 12, or for some of the firefighters, I mentioned 24 hours in a day at this workplace. And we're often spending more time with our colleagues than we are with our families. So it's important for those people, for the experience that they have. It has such a profound impact on their lives, and that's one of the things that really motivates me. But from the organizational perspective, people who are happy and motivated to come into work and not dreading coming into work are more productive. They're going to be better with your customers or with your members of the public if you're broader public sector, as a lot of our clients are. And if your teams can get along better and collaborate better, then you're also going to be more productive, more profitable, and have a lot of business benefits and have a lot less turnover, which is one of the most expensive things for any organization. So does the training actually achieve all of that? I believe the training is a very important piece in achieving all of that. But it should also be part of a broader program that involves doing some preparation work before the training, doing follow-up and reinforcement work after the training, and doing other culture building and team building pieces as well. And when we really invest in this program, of which the training is an essential part but not the only part, then we can start to see these transformative changes.
I couldn't agree more. You're saying that the training is not the only component that contributes to that. So I wonder, I think people are probably thinking, as you were sharing that, what are some of the other structures that should be in place in order to support the impact of the training?
First and foremost, commitment from the leadership level, and visible commitment. So they are involved in the messaging of it, that this is an initiative that's important to our organization. We're going to take it seriously. We're rolling out this training, and we want everybody to attend and to take it seriously. And then it needs to be accountability at all levels of management for, okay, now we've done this training, we know what kinds of behaviors we're expecting, and we're going to hold people accountable to those behaviors. Mm-hmm. So that's one whole piece of it, is the leadership buy-in and the accountability for management. Another piece is more structural. So some of the biggest barriers that we find to positive and respectful workplaces are actually more structural things, things like role clarity. So a lot of conflict are balls are being dropped because everybody's pointing fingers and saying it's the other person's job, or conversely, the turf war where people are saying that person's doing my job but not doing it well. So dealing with some of those role clarity issues, having our performance management and, if possible, our performance pay systems. I say if possible because it's more possible if you're for profit than if you're government. But certainly having the performance review systems actually highlight and have an essential element of that be culture-related things, how people behave in the workplace and treat others with respect, and for managers and supervisors, how they manage conflict and resolve conflict and don't allow it to fester. Because if you can do all the training you want that says this is how you should behave, but if that's not what's rewarded, people just naturally will tend to prioritize what's rewarded. So there are, and I could go on, there are a number of other more structural things we can think about as well. So that's a piece to support it. And then there's I would say the direct follow-up from the training. So the reinforcing the learning, the encouraging reflection. So, hey, we talked about bystander interventions. Have you had a situation come up in the last month in which something disrespectful was happening? And did you intervene? And if the answer is no, no shame. No shame. But what might make it easier for you to use those bystander intervention strategies in the future? What made it hard this time and what might make it easier? And so that reflective practice and that ongoing reminder can be very useful as well.
So what I'm hearing is, following a training session, there not only needs to be change that occurs, we also need to remove the obstacles for people to utilize their learning.
Yes.
And so all those things together result in the transformation that we're looking for and that you're looking for. And so that was very insightful, Brian, and I want to thank you so much for sharing all that you've shared today. Is there any one either key takeaway or piece of advice that you'd like to share? And I'm going to leave it open purposely so that you can choose anything that you want.
I think it's important to stay the course, to understand that culture change takes time. And I really look at this through a culture change lens. And so not a one-off training lens, but the training being a piece of this culture transformation. And the culture change lens says that initially you may have a culture where disrespectful behavior is just accepted, that this is the way it is. And the one person who might raise their hand to speak out against it, they stand out, and that makes it very hard to do that. But if we can build that confidence and that trust that you can speak out against it, and part of that is the training. One of, I think, the big benefits of respect training is that it sets this baseline of this is the kind of behavior that is not acceptable, and we're saying this not because we think you're the perpetrator and you better stop. No, it's the opposite. It's you as a member of this community, of this organization, this is the kind of behavior you don't have to put up with, right? We don't expect you to put up with this kind of behavior. And as a bystander or as an ally, this is the kind of behavior that we expect you to take some action if you see it happening. And those messages, along with the practical tools that we've discussed, start gradually to shift that culture to more and more people not accepting that behavior, the bad behavior is normal, right?
Yeah.
And speaking up as bystanders, reporting it to management if they're the victim, and eventually, as we gradually stay the course and keep reinforcing and keep having management hold people accountable and keep looking at removing these structural barriers, and we stay the course, we eventually reach a tipping point beyond which the person who behaves badly is now the one who sticks out. That's not normal. We don't do things like that around here. And once you reach that tipping point, then you can sustain that positive culture for a very long time, as I think we've done internally here at Bernardi. And so, it's not easy, but be patient, stay the course, be consistent, and it can happen.
We've got to start somewhere, and as long as we start planting the seeds and watering them so that they can grow is the important part. So
Yes.
Brian, thank you so much for sharing your insights with us today, and thank you for joining us on Transforming Workplaces from Policy to Practice. You can connect with Brian on LinkedIn, and you can connect with the Bernardi Centre at hrlawyers.ca. And until next time, keep planting those seeds.